Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Life Transformation UK. My name is Ben, and in this video today, I want to talk about how to deal with feeling shame because it is such a huge barrier to self acceptance and self esteem and having healthy self confidence as well. And I went through an experience today that taught me a lot about shame and how to deal with it over time. And I wanted to share that with you today. Normally, on this time of the month, I would be sharing a goals report, but I thought that this was going to be a much more valuable video that I could create for you today. So, we're going to be looking into how to deal with feeling shame. I'm going to share a little bit of my experience and the lesson that I learned from that. And I really hope that this is going to have a positive impact on your life. So if you enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a like because it really helps to boost the video in the YouTube algorithm. It supports me as a creator and lets me know that I'm doing a good job as well. If you're new to the channel, also make sure that you are subscribed because I create 3 videos every week on self-esteem, self-confidence and self-improvement, all geared towards helping you achieve your freedom through confidence and live the life of your dreams. Now, let's just jump straight into what happened. And basically, I was in a situation where I was being trained at work and I was suddenly called upon to perform a task in front of people that I just didn't know. I had only met them a few days earlier. They're more or less still complete strangers to me, no matter how many icebreakers we've done. And the exercise just completely went wrong. I totally collapsed and fell apart when I was doing it. I had no idea what I was doing, so I tried to just fumble my way through it. And to make a point, not necessarily to make an example out of me, but to show how wrong things can go, my trainer played along and just kept making it worse and worse and worse. Now, he didn't do this maliciously. He was doing this as a training exercise. And you know what? I'm looking at it now and I'm glad he did it because it's going to prepare me for the future. But I just absolutely crumbled. And it didn't really help that from the outside perspective, the other trainees thought that it was quite funny. And at the time I thought, oh, they're laughing at me. And I had all these insecure and anxious thoughts just bombarding me. And I just felt awful at the time. Now, bear in mind, this is only a few hours ago. And once I kind of got through that, I realized that this was going to make a pretty great video. So what I was immediately thinking after all this happened is that I was transported back to being the old Ben. And I dealt with a lot of anxiety and I dealt with a lot of insecurity when I was younger. Not even all that long ago, I'm talking about maybe 5 years ago. When I was in college, a little bit longer ago than that, I was so anxious that I actually went and hid in bathroom stalls between breaks at college just so I didn't have to interact with other people just because of how anxious and panicked that made me feel. The idea of going and integrating and communicating with other people made me feel like I was going to actually die. And so even though I've done a lot of work on this, and this is one of the key lessons that I'm going to get to in a minute, no matter how much work you do on yourself, there are still going to be times when you get really anxious or you might have a panic attack or you're going to get super, super insecure. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not okay to feel bad or to feel insecure or anxious. The most confident people in the world still have problems with their anxiety from time to time. So don't ever let that discourage you. No matter how well you might have been doing up to that point, anything can happen. And so getting back to what I was feeling in the moment, I was actually, well, really the first thing that I thought to myself was, Ben, you're an idiot. You're an absolute effing moron. You're stupid. You don't know what you're doing. You're making a fool out of yourself. This was going through my head, just one thought after another. And after a while, as tends to happen when you let your thoughts snowball, they started getting really, really negative and even hateful towards myself. And genuinely, what is my particular thought pattern when it comes to this is that it will start quite mild and it will quickly escalate to an extreme level where one minute I'm thinking you're an idiot and the next second I'm thinking, why are you even alive? That is the kind of the big leap that my thought process takes. And I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me in any way. It is what it is. That's just my thoughts. And that's the way that I see them now. Those are just my thoughts. They're not actually what I think. They're just automatic and they come into my mind. And a lot of the time I can't do anything about it. I can only deal with how I respond and react to those thoughts. So all these thoughts are going in and out of my head. I'm feeling terrible. I completed the exercise. I laughed it off with everyone else. And then I went on break. And that was when I started to kind of process what had happened. And that's the first good thing that I did. And I'm going to kind of break this down in terms of what I did to overcome feeling shame and deal with feeling shame in a relatively fast way. Because before, it would have taken me months to get out of this slump of shame after making even the smallest of mistakes. And bear in mind, this is a small, minor mistake. I was in training. It wasn't expected for me to be perfect. It was a training exercise. So the first good thing I did was that I stepped away from the situation. Everyone went on break and I went on break as well. Now, the next thing is that I spoke to someone about it. I went and I spoke to my mum. And I know, 25-year-old man speaking to his mum whenever he gets upset. It's good to have a support network. So whether that's your friend, your mum, your dad, your dog, it doesn't matter. Just go out there and speak to someone about when you're feeling down or when you're feeling upset or when you're feeling shame, like how I was. And so I spoke to her about it, and that was really all I needed. She listened. She didn't really try and provide any solutions, which was great. That's exactly what I needed. I just needed someone to listen. I'm sure we can all relate to that in some way when somebody tries to solve our problem instead of just listening to it. And that was the first thing. And then I went back to work. And what I found was that I started doing something automatically. It wasn't something that I thought, right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, this, this. What started happening automatically, and I'll grab my notebook for you in a minute, but I just started taking notes of what I was feeling, what thoughts were going through my head. And this probably just looks like an absolute jumble of thoughts at the moment, but I just started making notes on what was going on in my mind. And so I jotted down what my first thoughts were, which is what I've shared with you already. But what started happening was that I started to write down things that made me feel better. And the first thing that I wrote down was, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel bad about not being okay. You don't need to feel ashamed for not being experienced. It's perfectly normal to make mistakes. And that was when other thoughts started creeping in. The people don't like you. So I wrote down after that, I have no proof that other people in the group don't like me. And then I thought, everyone was laughing at me. And then I wrote down again, I have no proof that people were laughing at me. In fact, in hindsight, they were laughing at the situation, not the people that were in it. Then I wrote down, you tried and you did your best, which I did. Attitude does not equal emotions, because one of the things that popped in my head was, I just need to be positive. And that's one of those things. Positive thinking will inevitably always bring you down because it denies what you're actually feeling. And having a positive attitude is not the same thing as having positive emotions. So always sit with what you're feeling. Know what you're feeling. I knew that what I was feeling was shame because I wrote it down. And once I had gotten all of my thoughts, both positive and negative, out of my mind, I started to feel better straight away. I knew that I was probably going to feel bad about what happened for a little bit. So the next thing that I did was that I went straight in to go and get a win. Now, what happened next was that another assessment came up, and it was an actual test that I knew that I could do. And this was the way that I was going to get my confidence back. And I went into that test and I got 100%, and I got every single answer correct. And that was also a good thing, because when you're feeling down, it's one of the best things to do. It's not necessarily to try and get yourself into a positive state, but to remind yourself that you're not an idiot. and that you are worthy of feeling great about yourself. And one of the best ways to do that is to list something that you're grateful for. List some ways that you have won in your life today. They don't have to be massive wins. They can be small wins like getting up on time, eating healthy, taking a shower, getting to work on time, things like that. Anything that you've done which is a small win that you might have just completely discounted, make an actual note of it. Acknowledge that you've done great there. Gratitude, making a list of the ways that you've succeeded, and making a list of things that you love about yourself. Now, I chose to just go with the wins, and specifically this one win, because it proved to me straight away that it was just that task that I wasn't good at, and there were other stuff that I was still good at, and that I don't need to be good at everything. I only need to be good at a few things, really, to be effective in what I do in life. And what happened was that I started to think about, well, why did this all happen in the way that it did? Not necessarily the negative feelings and emotions and thoughts that came up in my mind, but why did I respond the way that I did? Why did I go straight into taking the action that I did? And really what it is years and years of conditioning myself so that when I was feeling insecure or when I was feeling anxious, that I went into my positive coping mechanisms. And these were things I learned from extensive reading, from therapy. These are things I learned from others and from my support network, and just from learning as much as possible about myself. For example, I know that when it comes to anxiety and insecurity, and what eventually led to my self-loathing and self-hatred, I know that shame is a big trigger of that. And I was able to identify that pretty quickly. Right, this is what has triggered this wave of negative emotions. And having gone through this process of self-development and self-improvement, I have developed the coping mechanisms to deal with that. And I know that it might sound scary saying that it might take years and years to learn how those coping mechanisms will eventually become automatic, because that's what it is for me now. I was put into an experience where I felt shame, and that triggered a set of emotions and thoughts. And those emotions and thoughts triggered an automatic process which helped me to cope with them. But it wasn't always like that. I had to learn how to do that over time. It took me so long to do that. But what it started with was that I did it once. And this is where it will begin with you. If you aren't as kind of fully fledged in coping mechanisms as I might be, or the next person might be, it all starts with doing it once. So it might just be taking a deep breath when you feel angry or anxious or insecure. And that could be the one coping mechanism you try. And if that works, great. If it doesn't, you try something else. Maybe you come back to that later and see if it works in different situations. But the point is, you only ever need to try your coping mechanism once. And if it works in some way, then you do it again once, and again and again and again, just one time each time. And what happens is that every single time you do it and it works for you, what you're doing is you're reinforcing that you can take control of the way that you react and respond to what's going on in your life. You might not be able to control everything. You might not be able to control your thoughts and your emotions and the way that you feel, but you can change the way that you react and respond to it. And that's where coping mechanisms come in. And that's why they're so powerful as tools and techniques. And you start by just practicing them one day at a time. And what happens is that over time, those positive effects, they compound and they become more and more powerful. And as I referenced in my last video on how to make confidence unconscious and how to reprogram your mind for it, I'll leave a link to that in the description. I'll have it pop up above my head now. But the best thing to do is just practice it. And eventually that practice becomes permanent. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And those coping mechanisms eventually become completely automatic. So just start today. Start with one thing. Find out what works with you. If you want tips and recommendations on some coping mechanisms that can work, leave me a comment, send me a message, and I'm more than happy to help in any way that I possibly can. I want to help people. That is the mission of this channel is to help you achieve your freedom through confidence. And part of that is learning the right coping mechanisms for dealing with shame and insecurity and anxiety and things like that. And the final thing that I've done, which I believe has been the most positive thing I possibly could have done with this experience, is that I turned it into a win. I turned it into an actionable lesson that I can share with other people. And when you can take a bad situation in any way and turn it into a win, that is when you have begun to master the process of controlling how you react and respond to things. It's got nothing to do with positive thinking. It's got nothing to do with having a positive attitude. And it's got everything to do with proving to yourself that you can control your reactions and responses to what is going on in the world. I really hope that this has been helpful. I really intended this to be quite a short video, and it's turned out to be at least over 10 minutes long, maybe like 12, 13 minutes. Thank you very much for sticking with me all the way through. If this video has impacted you in a positive way, let me know in the comments section down below. As I said at the beginning of this video, make sure to subscribe if you're new around here, you like this kind of content. I always try my best to be honest and as helpful as possible. So if you like that, subscribe to the channel. There's plenty more where that came from. Leave a like on the video as well. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and to let me know that I'm doing a good job. But otherwise, once again, thank you very much for making it all the way to the end of this video. And I really hope that I will see you in future videos very, very soon.